Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome to 3 Point Play. Jay Crawford, Ben Axelrod coming to you live from WKYC Studios, bringing you all the latest in Cleveland sports. It is March 9th, 2020. We're going to talk a little Indians baseball.
We're getting there.
Yeah, just about 2 weeks away from...
Hard to believe.
The season opener on March 26th against the Detroit Tigers at Progressive Field. And I'm looking at this. The Cleveland Indians released their new hashtag for the season, #OurTribe.
Yep, that's their new slogan.
That's their new slogan. That's going to be you'll see it on the commercials, see it on social media.
Replacing Rally Together.
Rally Together. It had been Rally Together for a few years. I didn't like Rally Together. Rally Together to me implied that you were already down.
Yeah, I know.
That you needed to come from behind.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's Our Tribe now, and I guess the question is, for how long will Francisco Lindor remain a member of Our Tribe?
Yeah, that's a great question.
He's at the forefront of this Indian season. There was thought to be a deadline in early March, which we're just getting past as far as negotiations between the Indians and Lindor on a long-term contract. Obviously, they can revisit that, but there was a report earlier this week or late last week that the two sides are still talking, that they're talking long-term extension, but I think you and I are kind of the same mind of this. Is you just look at the way baseball has trended, and it's hard to see where the two sides are going to find any significant overlap on an extension.
Yeah, ultimately what it's going to come down to is a calculation from Frankie's team, how much he'll be worth if he just baselines his numbers over the last couple of years for the next two seasons. What will he be worth when he hits the open market? Mm-hmm. So the calculation is, if they can leverage the Indians to get to that number, whatever that is, or above it, then it might behoove everybody involved to go ahead and strike a deal, because if Frankie's production does fall off, or God forbid, an injury, he doesn't have the long-term protection. So he is, every day he doesn't sign, he is in essence rolling the dice on the long-term cash. We know he's got 40-some million left on his 2 years with the Indians. So it's not like Frankie's ever going to be needing grocery money.
No.
But this is generational money. This is, the long play. I don't know, Ben. When I look at the whole situation, I think it's a lot of false hope. I don't see Frankie's team doing anything at this point but taking him to the open market.
Right.
That's been their stance all along when they broke off negotiations the last time. I definitely would be shocked if we go into the season and you hear that there's still some talks going on between. I think when the season starts,
right.
I know that this was a soft deadline.
I
think we could too. Yeah, if I'm Frankie, I'm telling my management team, and my management team is telling the Indians, I don't want to talk about this. I don't want to think about this. I want to go put numbers up, have a great season, play for my next contract, and see what happens. So I just don't really buy into all these stories that you could hear a long-term deal announced with Frankie any day now.
Yeah.
I think his team's committed to taking him to the open market. It is a bit of a risk because he could end up losing in the neighborhood of $200 million. I don't know where the Indians were on their last offer.
It was $100 million after the 2016 season. So that was
rolling 17 and 18 in. Yeah, they're going to take him to the open market.
I mean, that's the thing, is Francisco Lindor's been betting on himself. I mean, 2016, he was a 23-year-old coming off of really his first full season in the majors. And he was willing to bet on himself then. And to me, that's kind of been the thing with all this, is once he turned down that $100 million, the writing was on the wall, because you knew pretty early. The problem for the Indians is he was just too good too soon. He knew how good he was.
Because they could have locked him up if he didn't have such a great year at 23. Then they could have gone to him with a great proposal, like they had done in the mid-'90s and even with Jose Ramirez.
That's what they've
and try to stretch them
MO.
out. You have to do it that way if you're Cleveland. You can't let these guys get to the end of their deal.
I mean, I think there was one offseason where they signed Kipnis, Brantley, and Yan Gomes all in the same offseason under the same negotiating tactic, which was, hey, we think you're valuable, we think you're part of our core. Let's just not even take this to free agency.
Right.
Let's lock you up. And in some cases, it was a good deal for the Indians, and in some cases, like with Jason Kipnis, it wound up coming back to bite them.
That one hurt them
These last few years. But I think with Francisco Lindor, he's already said he's not going to take a discount. Based on where baseball and its contracts are going, he's shown no signs of the decline or peaking or anything like that.
I think he's
better.
Well, his upside's he's already a perennial all-star.
He's been in the majors for 4 full seasons, an all-star in every season.
Yeah.
He's going to be one of those $300 million players. I mean,
I think he's in that neighborhood. They think he's in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
I know fans have been encouraged by some of the recent deals that were signed.
Well, so that's the thing.
Thinking that, well, maybe we can get that kind of a bargain. Yeah, he's the big example.
He signs a $200 million extension with the Brewers. He's 28 years old right now, which is what Frankie's going to be when he becomes an unrestricted free agent in 2 years. They're just different situations. Yelich has 2 years remaining on his deal with the Brewers, locked in under a previous deal with the Miami Marlins.
Which wasn't nearly what Frankie's deal is.
Not nearly what Frankie's deal is now, and it would take him to the open market at 30, where Frankie will be 28. Those 2 years make a huge, huge difference.
They do.
Actually, there's a third year on Yelich's. It was a team option for a third year, so he wouldn't be hitting the open market for 3 more years at 31 years old. They're just not comparable situations to me.
That's why Frankie's team isn't going to look at those numbers and think that they would give the Indians a similar deal. I think I've said all along, I think Frankie's in the $300 million range. Even if you sign him to a 10-year, $300 million deal at 28, you have him until 38 and it's shortstop. It's not beyond the realm of reasonability that he could still be a very productive shortstop in this league at 38 years old, particularly when you look at the kind of shape he's in. You don't see, he doesn't have the body type that you'd think would, with Kipnis I was a little concerned. He did have that little borderline to him where you could see maybe he could lose a step, which he did in his range. I think Frankie could easily play into his mid-30s and be a high-caliber all-star type player. I almost wish that the Indians or Frankie would come out and say, talks are off. I just hate this notion of leading fans to the hope faucet, thinking that, this thing's going to gush and we're going to get Frankie for 7, 8 more years. I don't see him signing long-term with the Indians. I think at this point, the only question is at what point do they decide that they have to trade him now to get the value that they need for him?
Yeah, I think, the posturing is a lot of people just covering, but both the Indians and Frankie, because if you're the Indians, you don't want it out there that you're not negotiating with and not making an effort to re-sign Francisco Lindor. And if you're Francisco Lindor, maybe he has his mind made up. Maybe he does want to go to a bigger market. Maybe he wants to play on the West Coast. Maybe he wants to play somewhere warmer. Who knows? That's just speculation. But for his image and all of that, for his legacy in Cleveland, I think he wants it out there that he wants to stay in Cleveland. So I think what we're hearing as far as these two sides negotiating and talking, and at this point, all they can do is talk to each other. It's not like he's out there negotiating with other teams.
That's it.
I don't. They've talked about this overlap where the Indians have to find a deal that makes sense for them, where they can stay competitive. And for Lindor, obviously, it's about the numbers. I just don't see where that overlap comes into play.
Yeah, I don't either. And I just wish that this saga would kind of go away for a while. Let's concentrate on baseball. Let's see what the Indians have. We'll know 2 months from now. Yeah. We'll have some sort of a sample of work to know whether they're going to be a team that will contend this year or not. And I think once they are at the point where they realize they're not going to be a contender, I wouldn't be surprised if that's in June and, even if it's before the deadline. Remember, every day they keep him, his value to other teams goes down.
At this point, yes.
And that means your return on a trade investment goes down as well. As it is, the market isn't bearing what the Indians feel Frankie's worth. That scares me because that means that if the Indians believe that they should get a haul for him and they're not getting those offers, and clearly they haven't yet because if they got the right one, they would have moved him. That tells me that there's a little bit of – they're out of touch a little bit, the Indians are, with what the market's going to give for Frankie. At some point, you're going to have to make the decision, we've got to move him because I don't think there's going to be a long-term deal. And so does anybody in their right mind think that if Frankie hits the open market as a member of the Indians in 2 years, that they're going to win a bidding war?
Oh, no. I mean, it's kind of almost like, it's kind of the Bryce Harper situation now.
Absolutely.
The finances between the two teams are a little bit different, but Bryce Harper went into that last season with the Nationals, still under contract with the team, but the writing was on the wall that he was going elsewhere.
Sure.
And actually, from a PR perspective, the Nationals, I think, basically leaked that they offered him $300 million. He turned it down. He wound up getting $330 million. So it worked out for him.
Yeah, but if you worked it out, I believe if you worked out with the years and the per year salary,
you're right, because he signed for 13 years with Philadelphia,
and he actually cost himself money.
You're right.
In the annual, if you base it off the annual. So I don't know. I don't think this is going to end well for the Indians. Now look, I hope they start 27-12.
Yeah.
They build a huge cushion and they start running away from the Central. I just don't know. I don't think they have the roster to do that.
Yeah.
You know, not without Kluber, and now Carrasco's got the elbow, and, you know, Mercado's. Yeah, I mean, you just don't know. You don't know how this is going to work out, but it feels to me like that window is on the way down and not on the way up.
Sure.
And that's never a good feeling for an organization, because when that window is on the way down for the Indians, if you play your cards right and if everything falls right, you could be at least 5 years away from flipping that talent cycle where the window's starting to open again.
Yeah.
I mean, they're loaded with young talent, but the way I look at the franchise right now, I feel like the window is closing, and it may be a while before it's opened up again.
Yeah, the new minor league rankings came out actually, I think 2 weeks ago, and the Indians are on the rise as far as a minor league farm
They've got
system.
talent in their system.
You look at their top 30, though, and it's very, like the first 15 guys are all guys who haven't even reached Akron yet.
Right.
Who are all single A, you know, guys who are just getting their feet wet in professional baseball. And one, that means they're still a long way away from reaching Cleveland. And two, a lot can change. Tristan McKenzie, who was their top prospect a year ago, now is like their number 9 prospect.
Yeah, well, I think that was injury-based.
Injury related.
The other thing, too, and this is a good point, it's so hard to project talent out when they're 19 and 20 in the system. It's so hard to project that talent out because we know from following baseball for years that there is a small percentage of guys that are in that can't-miss bin that actually turn into those can't-miss Hall of Fame kind of prospects. So when you start projecting talent out for 19, 20, and 21-year-olds, it's very, very difficult to try to extrapolate that and say, well, they're going to have that same impact on Major League Baseball when they're 27. You just don't know. And typically, unlike football, those long-term projections are not very reliable.
Let me ask you this. There is, you know, just following social media, there's this belief that the Indians should do whatever they can to keep Francisco Lindor.
Yeah, I'm not in that school.
Yeah. How
Are
come?
you?
No. I don't. I think it would be, you would win a PR battle for 1 day, 1 month, maybe one season worth of season tickets, but the realities of baseball's financial structure would make it impossible, I'd say, for the Indians to contend if they lock up. So it'd be at least 30% of their payroll into one player.
Well, if they continue to spend in the $100 million range,
or less than.
and now less.
Right.
I'm looking at the deals and the salary that they've cleared, and I'm wondering, are they maneuvering to try to fit Frankie into their future plans? I don't know, but you know, we've discussed this before. I am of the belief that the Cleveland Indians cannot afford a max type player.
Right.
Just because of the percentage of money that you're spending on one guy. So I think it's a bad play to try to do that. And you talk about the PR battle. We've had Frankie for the last 4 years. How's our attendance?
The home opener's not
It's not sold out
yet.
Yeah, but even looking back the last 4 years, where are we in the league?
Right. There's this belief that if they
And we've had
they're
him.
in the bottom half, or there's
They
this
are.
belief that
And
if they would sign him, that would help attendance. You're right. He's been
here. So you have a control in that experiment. It's not like you're adding a piece from outside. And gee, I wonder what adding Mike Trout to Cleveland's roster would do. Well, clearly it would be a boon in ticket sales and attendance would go up. But we've had Frankie.
Yeah.
And fans aren't going to games. So it's really hard to try to look at this and say, I was looking the other day in the 1930s and 40s. Cleveland was the 5th largest city in the United States. It was also the 5th largest metropolitan area in the United States. Care to take a guess where the metropolitan area is ranked in the U.S. right now?
I was looking at markets with just sports teams the other day, and I think they were 19th.
They are the 33rd largest metropolitan area in the United States.
Wow.
That's important because that's your drawing pool. That's that's why teams have geographic advantages in Major League Baseball. If you are an LA or a New York-based team, you have 20 million people in your drawing area that can come to a game every night. All you need to do is get 1% of those.
Well, and that factors into TV rights deals. And
Sure,
all
because
that,
your numbers are, and that's where they're making their money.
Right.
So that's why you're seeing the Stars go to the Angels, the Dodgers, the Yankees, the Mets, the Cubs, the Phillies.
The White Sox have been big spenders.
Chicago's. So these top 5 markets, and I just named New York, Chicago, Philadelphia, San Francisco, Los Angeles.
All those cities have 2 teams.
And they're loading up on the free agents because they have that advantage. Cleveland is the 33rd largest metropolitan area in the United States.
Yeah.
There are 30 Major League Baseball teams. That means there are metro areas in the U.S. without teams presently bigger than Cleveland. And that's frightening for the future because long term, and by the way, that number has only eroded and eroded drastically. We're coming up on a census. When the new census data comes out in a year or so, when that data comes out, I wouldn't be surprised at all to see Cleveland has slipped to the 38th or the 40th. And if you're an owner in a franchise city like Cleveland, where you're seeing dwindling attendance, dwindling population, and thus dwindling interest in your sport, and then you look around and say, wow, Charlotte is 18th. It is growing every census. It's probably going to be top 15 after this new census data, and they without a Major League Baseball team. At some point, those cities, as the population redistributes in the United States, those cities are going to become suitors for the Clevelands and the Detroits and the Pittsburghs and the Cincinnatis and the Milwaukees. The Rust Belt cities were just hemorrhaging population, and the southern-based cities that are growing at an incredible rate. So, I mean, at this point, long term, and you've got a stadium situation here in Cleveland where you don't know what's going to happen long term. So it's frightening to see what's going on. That's why I hope it doesn't come to the point that it did with the Browns, where we had to lose our team to remember how much we loved our team.
Yeah.
It kills me when I go to a game on a Friday night and there's 22,000 fans over there.
It's stunning.
I
It's
can't believe it, particularly when you look up at that number, what was it, 444 or whatever, of straight sellouts, whatever the consecutive number of sellouts were that the Indians had from the mid-'90s. You rarely see a sellout. Opening day isn't sold out this year.
Yeah. I mean, it's jarring. I used to live right downtown. I could just walk over, go to a game. You'd be there on a perfect Saturday afternoon, perfect weather, and you're staying there in the right field district, and you're looking out. You see, I mean, the entire top end of the stadium empty, and it's like
stunning.
And this is perfect conditions. What's it like when it's not perfect conditions?
I know.
What's
I
it
know.
like when
and I
there's
know
a worse
opening day is going to be
opponent?
cold, but we're from Cleveland. We're used to cold.
They're going to sell.
I would think it's going to sell out just with, I think, walk-ups alone
Right.
will do it. But the fact that this is a team that most of the experts will say is a contender,
Right.
and they're plus or minus 3 or 4 games from being a division champion, at least as far as the projections go, and you haven't sold out on opening day, that's stunning to me.
I
Stunning.
totally agree. And then just one more point about Lindor and signing him to a max deal. We look at this roster and we look at their outlook for the season, and they need to improve. I mean, that outfield, if Mercado's down, like that's a bad outfield situation. I think there's this idea that if they re-sign Lindor, like that they're going to keep spending. That's where the spending stops, and that's what your roster. And
absolutely,
in fact,
it has to.
You're probably losing Clevenger. You're probably not re-signing guys like Carlos Santana. Jose Ramirez's contract's up in a few years.
And then it gets into the how do you compete
Right.
when you've got. I mean, just look at the Detroit Tigers the last 3 or 4 years, and look at their future moving forward. They're straddled with a max deal, even though there's no cap. It's basically one of those deals that at the time it was groundbreaking. I think he was the highest paid player, Miggy, when he signed the deal. And at the time of the deal, I looked at it, and I looked at his body type, and I looked at his back history, and I thought, what are they doing?
Right.
It's clear they were going for one last run. But when they signed him, you saw Verlander leave. You saw, who was the other pitcher with the Nationals? Max Scherzer leave. And how do you compete with now a broken down, aging Miggy, and you're looking at 100 losses? I don't want that to become the fate of the Cleveland Indians, and I think ownership understands that. My only fear is that they're looking also at fan pressure, and they're listening to what everybody's saying, and we'll see what happens.
We will. Looking at their spring training lineup for today, it looks like they have a split squad game.
They do have split squad today.
This is interesting, though. I'm looking, and this looks like the A squad. Their lineup: Cesar Hernandez, Carlos Santana, Francisco Lindor. Lindor batting third. There's been some talk about moving him out of the leadoff spot because he's such a good hitter. You want more guys on base.
Yeah.
You feel good about, Hernandez.
I don't
is
hate
an
him in the
experienced-
3-hole.
I think that he's kind of a natural, traditional 3-hole hitter.
Yeah, I think it helps Ramirez too. I do like if you've got the bats and you can let him set the table. I do like him as a table setter.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't want him batting guaranteed once every game with nobody on base.
Right.
Not a fan of that.
And I think that's where this comes from. He
I
hits
think
so many,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, they're going to have to try to scrape runs together wherever they can. I see that Bradley Zimmer's in the lineup today with that squad.
He's in center field, yeah. Franmil Reyes is on the other team. But this pretty much looks like the A team other than a guy here or there.
Yeah, that's going to be very similar to what we look like when we open the season. I think the only question would be, I don't know about Zimmer starting in center field.
Yeah, I would think the Shields
Mercado's
maybe.
wrist, it's a sprain, so that could leave him unavailable for opening day.
Yeah.
And DeShields is a guy that I think the Indians are thankful that they have, even though he seems more like a situational guy.
Yeah.
You know, a late inning pinch runner type guy in a tie game or down a run. You need to manufacture something, and you get a leadoff guy on. I don't know, though. Like I said, we'll know a lot more in 2 months from now.
Yeah.
But
it's going to be a crucial 2 months, too, because that's going to dictate the trade deadline. And there's going to be a lot of eyes on the Indians, even if they're not in the stadium.
Yeah, I know. That's frightening.
Real quick here, and then we'll get out of here. Cleveland Browns about a week away from free agency, start of the new league year. Been linked. We've talked a lot about offensive tackles in the draft. They've been linked now to Jason Peters, who's a free agent coming off a few years with the Philadelphia Eagles, and then Trent Williams with the Washington Redskins. They'd have to trade for him.
Yeah.
He's looking for $20 million a year. I don't know for how many years. We've talked about drafting a left tackle or a right tackle at number 10. How do you feel about acquiring a veteran?
I'm not nuts about it. I would much rather take our chances and see which tackles are. We know there's 4 blue chip tackles in this draft. Some say even more.
Yeah.
I think that I think the kid from Iowa is going to be off the board. I do.
It seems like
his
it.
draft stock has skyrocketed since the combine.
Tristan Wirfs.
So I think Wirfs will be gone. I think that that leaves
Mekhi
Jackson. Now, it all depends on what they do. If they sign a free agent, then maybe they're probably okay not moving up to try to get a tackle.
Yeah.
I don't really think signing a free agent is the way to go here. There are some things that I read last year about Williams that sort of scared me off his trail a little bit.
Well, and Washington's asking price for him has never really been in line with what other teams have asked for a player.
I mean, he was
of
on the
his
market
age.
all last year, and you kept hearing, the Browns are ready to pull the trigger. Well, I think the Redskins knew that they had the gun, and they were trying to leverage too much away from a team that was desperate.
And he wound up not passing his physical once
exactly,
he did
and that
report.
scared me. I just think I know that you'd love to have a proven quality guy at that position, and we talked last week about the fact that the college game isn't producing the kind of offensive linemen that it did 10 years ago because they're playing a different style. So they're not learning the different blocking schemes that the NFL uses because they're not running NFL-style offenses. So I do think you run the risk, but the worst kid is he's a wrestler from a wrestling-rich state. I mean, I've always looked at offensive linemen that have wrestling backgrounds as huge plus upside because they understand the concept of leverage, using your own weight and the other guy's weight against him. He's got a great coach in Kirk Ferentz who I think understands the offensive line position. I think he's NFL ready. You can plug him in any situation and play. If the Browns get in a situation where they think someone's going to make a move for him at 6 or at 4 and they decide to move up, I wouldn't hate that as long as they get their guy. But I do think that they're going to take a lineman in the draft, and they may sign one as well.
Yeah, I think between Wirfs, Becton, Andrew Thomas from Georgia, who some have ranked as the top offensive tackle, Austin Jackson, Jedrick Wills from Alabama. I think there's going to be a tackle there worth taking at 10, and I would take a tackle at 10 just because the need is so great, both on the left side and the right side. If they take a guy who they think projects as a right tackle, which I guess they wouldn't know ahead of free agency, so that's where kind of the rubber meets the road.
I think didn't Wirfs play right tackle but moved to
left
tackle?
Most of these guys have experience on both sides.
Right, yeah. I think he was moved to left tackle in the season because their left tackle went down. So he could play left tackle.
Wirfs and Wills both have definitely played both.
And they have the size.
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at the size of some of these guys that are coming out, I think they're prototypical left tackles in the NFL.
I think the need is so great that you have to use that number 10 pick or you trade up on an offensive tackle. And
I'd
there's
be
really
disappointed and stunned if they don't have a tackle on their roster that's drafted in the top 10 picks.
If Isaiah Thomas fell to 10 somehow, which it seems doubtful at this point, then I'd be willing to have a conversation and negotiate a little about that. But outside of him, I just don't see a scenario where leaving without an offensive tackle makes sense. Having said all that, though, I still do think that the need is so great that they should be looking to address it in trades, in free agency, and that doesn't necessarily mean paying Trent Williams $20 million a year or
with the Williams thing too, it's not just paying him.
Mm-hmm. Well, you'd have to give up a draft pick, a second-round pick probably.
And from the sounds of things, the Redskins think that his value is top shelf, so you're going to have to give up probably a first and maybe another pick.
A first would be a non-starter. It'd be a non-starter.
I wouldn't be interested at all. The thing is, I said they have the hammer because there is a real shortage of quality offensive linemen in the NFL. It used to be a team, if they had 3 above average offensive linemen, that they were strong and set. Mm-hmm. Today, if you have 3 strong offensive linemen on your team, that's a rarity.
Yeah.
There's just the talent at that position. We've seen it dwindle. And again, that has something to do with the college game running a different scheme. And these guys aren't coming to the league NFL ready like they used to when you had a Big Ten that was a run and some teams that ran a pro style set. That we don't see that a lot in the college ranks anymore.
Yeah, I think I've mentioned him before too. Jack Conklin from the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, I'd be more interested in him because he's younger.
He's younger, and he's the kind of guy who you would want to invest in and who would be worth investing in while you have a rookie left tackle, presumably, on a rookie deal.
Right.
To me, that makes sense, and then you can make that decision down the line. But he's more of that long-term fit. Whereas Williams or especially Jason Peterson,
I think they're Band-Aids.
38 years old, Band-Aids. Yeah. But I could see the argument for a Band-Aid because this team is in such win-now mode. It's kind of playoffs are busted.
But I don't even know. Are they just one player away? I don't know.
No.
It feels like they're not. Last year, I thought going into the season, I thought we were a left tackle away. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we were much more than that. But I feel like we've regressed from where we were at this point a year ago. I don't think we're as within close strike distance.
Sure.
Now,
all that being said, they're going to lose Joe Schobert probably.
It looks like he's done, which I hate to see. Somebody's going to get a really good ball hawk linebacker that we're going to give up on, and I hate to see him go. Curious to see what he's going to command on the open market. I don't know what his worth is, but I think it's probably more than the Browns want to pay at this point.
Yeah, I think so too. Lots of coming and goings here in the Cleveland sports scene. We will have you updated with all the latest on WKYC.com and on 3 News. That's going to do it for us today, though. For Jay Crawford, I'm Ben Axelrod. Thanks for watching 3 Point Play.
See ya. Alrighty. Thank you, Ben.